Hey friends, if you want to watch chapters 1 to 14, the link is in the description below. I'm uploading that video on a different channel due to copyright concerns. So if you're interested, just click the link and enjoy the episodes there. The mages in Song Fei's group raised their staves in fury, and the newly recruited archer took aim at King Feng. Rage burned in their hearts as they vowed to avenge Song Fei. Vanishing into thin air, King Feng activated his stealth ability, slipping into the shadows. The archer, undeterred, used her eagle eye skill, revealing that King Feng's invisibility would not work on her. Her arrow transformed into a ghostly eagle that soared before bursting midair, scattering glowing feathers like shimmering rain. These feathers landed on the party's own assassin, revealing her presence and breaking her stealth. The chubby girl clenched her fists with satisfaction, believing they had exposed King Feng. She ordered a full-power assault. Without hesitation, Song Fei's loyal followers unleashed their strongest spells. A barrage of magical attacks rained down on the revealed figure. In a panic, the real assassin shouted that she wasn't King Feng, but it was too late. The spells struck her directly, erupting into a massive explosion. Rather than grief, the chubby girl felt contempt. To her, the fallen assassin wasn't a real mage and thus undeserving of Song Fei's affection. She considered this divine justice for someone whose loyalty wasn't genuine. She quickly instructed the archer to launch another eagle to track King Feng. The archer nodded, but before she could act, King Feng activated his Ghostfire Bell. A pulse of energy radiated out, triggering its soul attack ability, immobilizing all enemies within 100 meters for 3 seconds, with a long cooldown of 521 seconds. Before anyone could move again, King Feng emerged from the shadows, and with a blindingly fast, instant slash, he tore through the frozen players like a storm, leaving no time to react. Hidden behind a wall, Song Fei peeked out in confusion. He couldn't understand why his entire party had fallen so suddenly. Initially, he suspected Shadow, but quickly dismissed the thought if Shadow had struck, he would have revealed himself. Unseen, King Feng crept up behind Song Fei. His cold gaze said it all: Song Fei's end was near. Upon hearing King Feng's voice, Song Fei turned pale, trembling in disbelief. In a panic, he cast a shield spell, forming a radiant barrier around himself. But King Feng calmly tossed a poison dart. It pierced the shield with ease, striking Song Fei in the forehead and sending him screaming to the ground. Song Fei's form dissolved into luminous orbs of lifespan. Deactivating stealth, King Feng observed the scene. He was surprised by the sheer amount of tradable lifespan over 2,000 days. Song Fei had been hoarding it. Puzzled, King Feng noted that none of Song Fei's fans had any tradable lifespan remaining. It became clear they had sacrificed everything to empower Song Fei. Their fanaticism was terrifying. Hundreds of years' worth of lifespan would now be absorbed by nearby monsters. Back in Firefly Town, Song Fei and his fans respawned. Furious, Song Fei realized his reserve of tradable lifespan had dropped from over 2,000 to just 500 days. He questioned the archer, frustrated she hadn't detected King Feng. She explained she had used her skill, but it had only picked up their own teammate. The chubby girl confirmed that the party assassin had some stealth abilities, but didn't know how King Feng had evaded detection. The archer clarified that her eagle eye could only detect stealth up to level 1. King Feng's must be higher. Song Fei, feeling helpless, muttered that Shadow must have taken the boss out of envy for his unrivaled looks. Now, uncertain and insecure, he feared another attack. His fans, unwavering in devotion, offered to level up elsewhere for safety. Wherever Song Fei led, they would follow. Not long after, King Feng returned to Firefly Town. Finding the area empty, he asked a nearby player if he had seen Song Fei. Recognizing Shadow, the man nervously pointed out their direction, even begging King Feng to kill Song Fei and to spare his girlfriend, a hunter named One Flying Treasurecat. King Feng dryly suggested the man find another girlfriend, suspecting she was the one with detection powers. Re-entering stealth, He vanished again. The man pleaded desperately, but King Feng knew tracking Song Fei blindly would take too long. He muttered that things would be easier if Gu Yixu was around. Just then, as if fate heard him, a woman passed by, and it was Gu Yixu. Surprised, King Feng dropped stealth and greeted her warmly, asking for her help. She was startled by his sudden appearance. He offered her a golden-grade staff, saying he'd heard her class could track targets across large areas. If she helped him find Song Fei, she could have it at a discount. Her eyes lit up, excited by the deal. She asked how he knew about her tracking skill she'd never told anyone. He replied with a grin, asking if she had at least 500 days of lifespan. She checked her system window, she had 700. They completed the trade, and Gu Yixu held the staff in awe, practically drooling. King Feng gently tapped her cheek to snap her out of it, urging her to focus. Blushing, she nodded and began to concentrate. An owl spirit circled above her as she prepared her skill. Curious, she asked if King Feng wasn't worried she'd just take the staff and leave. He calmly asked if she didn't despise Song Fei. Her eyes widened. How did he know? She felt a strange sense of familiarity from him, but couldn't place it. King Feng smiled and told her to guess. She didn't bother, raising her hand as her owl soared into the sky. In a moment of clarity, her expression changed. She'd spotted something. The owl flew high over the town, and in the distance, nestled between the canyon ridges, Gu Yixu saw them, Song Fei and his followers. Finally, Yui's white owl spotted Song's location amidst the rocky canyon paths, and she quickly relayed the coordinates to Shadow. But she warned him, not without concern, that Song and his group might move again before he arrived. The owl was fast, but tracking them too long would wear it out. Shadow, focused and swift, reassured her with a calm voice. It would only take a few seconds. Without another word, Feng darted off, running with blinding speed, leaping across stone pillars and tearing through the jagged terrain. But as he advanced, the owl suddenly stopped. That caught his attention. Something was interfering with the tracking. Curious, he halted and observed a nearby tree marked with a strange symbol. Deciding to investigate, he called Yui again, and she redirected the owl to search the surroundings. The birds soon found 2 more trees etched with identical markings, one 100 meters ahead, another 100 meters to the left. Shadow approached each tree, brushing his fingers over the bark with caution. As soon as all 3 symbols received a touch of lifespan energy, a pulse of light surged between them. The ground at their center began to glow, and moments later an emerald-grade treasure chest materialized in a radiant golden aura. Feng froze in awe. A divine blessing, right here in a starter zone like Firefly Town. He could hardly believe it. These blessings from ancient gods were rare and unpredictable, able to appear anywhere in the Forsaken Lands. Some summoned monsters, some released plagues of creatures, and others like this held unimaginable treasures. Yui, who was still observing through her owl, was just as stunned. That emerald chest was worth at least 1,000 days of tradable lifespan, over 10 million real-world credits. Shadow was impressed by her quick math. In his past life, lifespan sold for 10,000 a year at launch, but by day 2, the value had skyrocketed to 50,000. Yui, still curious, began recording the symbols for future reference. A clever glint danced in her eye. Who knew what she could uncover with her tracking class? Meanwhile, Shadow opened the chest. Inside was a skill book glowing with malice, Curse of the Blossoms, and Emerald Tier ability. With it, cursed flowers could bloom from an enemy's corpse, draining their tradable lifespan to 0. The skill had no cooldown. Its only requirement was use within 15 seconds of the target's death. Feng remembered this wicked spell from his past life. With it, every kill became an opportunity. If he struck down Song again, guarded the corpse for just moments, he could rob him of everything. A dark smile crept across his face. This time, Song wouldn't just die, he would be emptied. As Shadow sprinted toward his prey, the scene shifted. In a distant canyon, Song's fangirls were fighting a boss, pouring damage into the beast while their idol waited in the back for the final hit. Song was smug, confident that Shadow wouldn't follow them this far. After all, Shadow had already stolen a silver tier boss and humiliated him twice. That should have been enough. He was wrong. Just as the boss weakened, the chubby girl pointed to another ridge where a separate party was battling another boss. Song, with the grace of a serpent, manipulated his fans again. He claimed the rival group was a fan guild of another idol, one trying to outshine him. The girls' expressions twisted in rage. No one would surpass their beloved Song. Without hesitation, they descended upon the unsuspecting group. The enemy team, thinking they'd gained allies, welcomed them. But before the words of peace could leave their lips, the chubby mage brought her staff down with brutal force, flattening the leader in one strike. The rest of the team stared in disbelief as Song's fangirls turned on them like wild animals, mumbling incoherently about idols and destiny. One girl tried to question what was happening, but was silenced by a wave of magic. In a bizarre flourish, the fanatics began reciting twisted poetry, proclaiming Song's divine arrival. With the enemy party wiped out, the girls stepped aside as their golden prince stepped forward to land the final blow on the boss. Song, still playing the innocent, thanked them all with fake sincerity, spinning lies about nearly being ambushed and praising their heroism. His words made them blush and giggle. They were completely lost in his delusion. But the show was over. As the camera pulled back, a lone shadow emerged at the edge of the canyon. Song sensed something was wrong. A chill ran down his spine. He turned too late. Fong's blade cleaved through the air like a flash of divine judgment. Instant slash. Song's head flew clean off and his body collapsed. But this time, Shadow didn't walk away. He knelt beside the corpse and invoked Curse of the Blossoms. A massive red flower sprouted from Song's chest, its petals pooling as they drank the tradable lifespan from the brat's body. The fangirls stared, dumbfounded, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. As the scene shifted, Song reappeared at the portal of Firefly Town, dazed and frustrated, still unable to comprehend why Shadow kept targeting him so relentlessly. In his twisted rationale, he convinced himself that it had to be jealousy. Perhaps Shadow was bitter over the crowd of fangirls constantly surrounding him. Or maybe one of those girls was someone Shadow liked. The brat thought the boy's constant visits to Firefly Town were no coincidence, and figured it was all some long-winded ploy for revenge. But while he stood in his overinflated theories, a sudden system notification sliced through his thoughts, warning him that his tradable lifespan was decreasing at a constant rate and had already plummeted drastically in just the few seconds following his latest death. Confusion gave way to panic as Song stared at the notification, unable to understand what was happening, until he speculated it could be some sort of penalty for dying too often. But before he could sort through the mess in his head, the rest of his fan club began arriving at the portal too. The chubby mage among them breathlessly informed Song about what they had seen. A sinister blood-red flower had bloomed over his corpse, clearly leaching something vital from the body. It didn't take long for Song to connect the dots. The cursed flower, the rapidly draining lifespan, it was all the work of Shadow, who had unleashed a new terrifying skill. Realization dawned on him with the weight of a hammer, and the brat snapped, commanding his followers to log off immediately. If they continued dying under Shadow's hand, their tradable lifespan would hit 0, and that meant true death. Still playing the charismatic puppet master, he called them his family, as he told them he'd head into reality to buy more time and later return with gear purchased using accumulated lifespan. The girls, still enchanted by their idol, accepted the idea wholeheartedly, each one dreaming of a triumphant comeback where they would confront Shadow with overwhelming power. Even as Song's digital presence vanished from the game, his face twisted in bitter frustration. He refused to accept this as defeat. After grinding for 2.5 years to build his current fame and resources, he couldn't believe that some nameless nobody could threaten it all. In his world, money crushed everything. He just needed time. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, blood-red blossoms bloomed across the ground, each one rooted to a corpse, silently siphoning the tradable lifespan out of Song's fanatics. Due to Shadow's ruthless spree, his Slayer tier had risen to level 4, causing a brutal 96.8% loss of tradable lifespan upon death. But Shadow didn't care. He estimated that this ambush had earned him another 1,000 days of life, a reward rightfully stolen from Song Fei and his delusional crew, who had clearly slain plenty of monsters before becoming fertilizer themselves. Yet the feast didn't last. The flowers gradually dimmed, and the flow of energy ceased. Shadow realized then that the players had all logged off to escape the effect. Above him, the white owl continued to circle silently. Yu had seen everything, and even she was shaken by the overwhelming display of power. To witness the true might of the top-ranked player was something else entirely. When Shadow turned toward her and asked whether Song had truly logged off, the girl confirmed it with a nod, explaining that the entire group had vanished to buy time. Shadow calmly instructed her to keep watching, and to notify him the moment Song dared to return. When she asked if her task was done, Shadow told her to wait a little longer. He just acquired a golden tier priest class skill, Sword of Divine Judgment, and her eyes practically lit up at the mention. She wanted it badly. Seeing this, Shadow offered to trade it to her for 500 days of lifespan, but added that he was willing to sell it at half the price if she accepted one condition. At first the girl narrowed her eyes and snapped that she wasn't about to sell her body, which made even Shadow flinch, as he quickly clarified that she was really overthinking it. All he wanted was for her to join his team as their long-term healer. Her expression relaxed, and with a light laugh she agreed almost immediately, though she warned him that if the team turned out to be a bunch of useless idiots, she'd personally blame him. Shadow assured her they were far from shabby and decided to contact them right away. The perspective then shifted to another part of the Forsaken Lands, where Wang Mang stood triumphantly over the twitching corpse of a poisonous monster, finally having slain the thing and grinning in celebration over the XP gain. He called out to Zhao, requesting a heal and an antidote, but the girl remained frozen and flustered, still completely unsure of what to do next. Wang tried to explain once more that Zhao's priest class came with a detoxification skill, but before she could even listen properly, she fired it off at a tree instead of her poisoned teammate. Time slipped through their fingers, and before another word could be said, Wang collapsed onto the ground and died from the lingering venom, his kill rendered meaningless. The rest of the team stood there in stunned silence, anger slowly boiling beneath the surface, each of them staring at Feng's little sister with disbelief. They weren't sure what to do with someone so catastrophically unhelpful. Later, as they stood by the teleportation stone, the team leader grimaced. He knew he had no choice but to replace the healer, but every capable hidden class priest had long since been recruited. Still, they couldn't go on like this. Meanwhile, Zhao remained utterly unaware of her own incompetence, floating in delusions of grandeur as she convinced herself she must be some kind of chosen one, a goddess of this new world. She was convinced that leveling to 4 with no effort was proof that the game was simple and her greatness inevitable. Soon, she thought, she'd be reunited with her glorious brother Song. But just then, Shadow's voice reached Wang Mang with news that made his pulse quicken. A hidden class healer, a white bird priest, had agreed to join them. She was apparently strong in other roles. It was the break the team needed, and the leader didn't hesitate for a second, urging to send her location. Shadow mentioned she was currently in Firefly Town, and though the area wasn't good for grinding, it was better to meet up and move forward as a unit. Wang nodded and prepared to head over, But first he had to deal with the problem child. He turned to Zhao and gently explained that their team needed to relocate to a higher level zone due to the dense population in Shelltown. He claimed, with well-practiced tact, that her level was simply too low to survive there. But before she could say anything, the entire party sprinted off without her, whooping in relief now that they were finally free from the burden of a healer who couldn't even heal. Zhao, however, remained unfazed. She believed their departure was a blessing in disguise. Clearly, they were too weak to be worthy of her. Now she would track down Shadow herself and make him carry her forward. In the meantime, Wang Meng arrived at Firefly Town and met with both Shadow and Yu. The moment he spotted them, he handed over the tradable lifespan he'd earned from their recent monster battle, eager to settle his debt and move forward. Even with their progress, he was beginning to realize how tough survival in this game really was. As they discussed their plans, Wang mentioned someone new, a captain named Inyo. The name froze Shadow in place, his mind racing. That name, it couldn't be a coincidence. And just like that, the girl arrived. Waving cheerfully at them, Inyu's presence drew both men's eyes immediately. Shadow couldn't believe what he was seeing. The stunning young woman in front of him was indeed that Inyu, codenamed Justice Execution, the only player in the entire game to wield the hidden class of Dragon Swordsman. In his past life, she had ranked among the global top 20 and had served as one of the key figures behind the official forces of the country. A national pillar, revered and feared in equal measure. And now she was here, early, radiant and blushing as she greeted Shadow with admiration in her eyes. She introduced herself warmly, confessing that she'd always looked up to him, even joking that he might be a time traveler or a reincarnated hero, given the insane pace of his growth. Shadow listened quietly, letting the memories of his previous life fill in the blanks. Back then, he had met her much later under different, darker circumstances. She hadn't been on the same team as Wang, which made this unexpected meeting all the more shocking. She already possessed a significant amount of tradable lifespan, likely accumulated on behalf of the government factions. And as a dragon swordsman, a class famous for its resilience, she was the perfect vessel for that kind of power. It was a smart, calculated move by the officials, and Shadow respected that. Enyu didn't mince words either. She made it clear that if Shadow had any gear he was willing to part with, she and her people would buy it all. She reminded him, sweetly yet firmly, that she carried the burden of a city's hope on her shoulders. Shadow had no reason to eliminate her, and they both knew it. He agreed easily, stating that he wasn't short-sighted enough to ruin such a mutually beneficial opportunity. A partnership like this could lead to immense gains on both sides. He knew that Inoue might seem cheerful and harmless on the surface, but her mind was sharp and her strategies thunderous. Those who underestimated her quickly learned why she was so feared. As soon as one of the girls from Song's group logged out of the game, she read an article and realized that, according to news released by the officials, the lifespans in the Forsaken game were too real. If it hit 0, the person would meet their end in real life as well. Another member started screaming on the phone, telling the others that before they met their end, they should subscribe to the channel so they could get the latest chapter fastest. She was starting to wonder, were they just playing a game, or had this suddenly become a matter of life and death because she had already given all her tradable lifespan to Song and had nothing left? Another girl started crying, telling her friends that she only had a few years to live. The fourth girl wondered how she had so little lifespan left, and the crying girl explained that because she had taken out quite a few other players for Song, she had earned a killer status. Dying once felt like losing 2 years of her life, which meant that if she died 2 or 3 more times, her lifespan would be over. Everyone realized that they only had a few years left, and if they didn't do something, it would be really dangerous for them. In the game, the chubby girl realized that she was always the tank, charging at the front lines. Because of this, she also got the killer status. But she knew that, in front of stronger opponents, even the blessed mages ended up dead. Now the chubby girl had just a little over 1 day left to live, and as soon as her lifespan hit 0, she would meet her end sooner than the others. She didn't want to believe what she read, even though it came from official sources. But suddenly another notification popped up. As the fatty read everything, she realized that her so-called brother, Song, was buying up lifespan for himself. She thought, maybe that bastard will definitely help me. She wanted to find him as soon as she could. She also wanted to look her best, well, the prettiest she could, so she decided to take off her usual clothes and wear her best outfit to the meeting place. And I kid you not, I don't break character and I'm all for body positivity. But what the ugly hell was this? Anyway, the fatty started running with insane speed, unnatural for someone her size. As the scene shifted, we came to Shadow's house, where his little sister finally woke up and realized that she had returned to reality. Even though it was getting hard to tell, she knew where she was. She immediately checked her phone and saw that the selling of lifespan had already started. She could sell a single day of life for more than 15,000, and with 200 days left, she was technically already a millionaire. But suddenly, she opened the chat from the same group and realized that Shadow had been targeting that bastard, Song, and had already killed him 3 times through assassination. Zhao started crying because she knew that if Song's lifespan ended in the game, he would also die in real life. Even though the sister wasn't the brightest, she had some brains. She knew that even if someone had 100 years of non-tradable life after dying 3 or 4 times, they'd only have about 12 or 13 years left in real life. But she still wondered why Shadow wanted to kill Song not once, but 3 times. Judging by the chatter in the group, Shadow had been cornered by dozens, but still took out Song like a pro, wiping out the whole squad of females. It was so terrifying that the girl wondered how someone could be this powerful. But suddenly, the chubby girl started sending messages to the group, telling all the other ladies to gather around so that Song could get more lifespan from them. She announced that all the female fans in the city who wanted to listen to Song should go find him and sell their tradable lifespan to him so that he could live longer and not suffer. The chubby girl announced that Song was at Grand River Square right now, and the exchange rate was 10,000 for 1 day of life. She manipulated the others, saying this was their chance to make infinite money and help their idol at the same time. As soon as the sister heard everything, she couldn't believe that Song was so close. There was no way she could just stand by and let this once-in-a-lifetime chance slip away. She knew she had to go and meet that bastard. Even the sister started running, just like the chubby girl, but this time at least she had the stamina and the proportions to do so. Thanks to other perverts, she had accumulated over 200 days of transferable life. Now she could actually help Song no matter what. As the scene shifted again, we went back inside the game, where we saw Shadow slashing through multiple sea monsters. System notifications popped up, telling him that his 4 core attributes had increased by 2 points, and he had gained 5 free attribute points along with unlocking career advancement. The system congratulated Shadow for being the first player in the city to reach level 10, earning him 7 prestige points and other rewards. Shadow was also the first player in the whole kingdom to reach level 10, earning him 2 more reputation points. The system told him that once there were 7 level 10 players in the city, a teleportation feature to the abandoned continent of the gods would be unlocked. As the first global player to hit level 10, Shadow also gained an extra 14 points and triggered a world announcement. As soon as people read the notification, they realized that Shadow was way too overpowered. He had snagged the first achiever's reward and was also the first in the world to hit level 10. Everyone also knew that Shadow had assassinated the little idol Song multiple times, and no matter what Song did, he couldn't escape. But the players were happy, knowing that Song deserved this beating. Another adventurer couldn't believe Shadow was from the same empire, because, in his team, there was a hidden class blacksmith who was still only level 8 after so much grinding. But for Shadow, it was different. He was already at level 10. The man had 500 million people in his country, but not one could catch up to Shadow. As the scene shifted again, we saw our boy standing by the ocean. The system notified him that he had spent 13 evolution points to upgrade his assassination skill from Platinum to Emerald, boosting damage from 40% to 50%. Now, Shadow was a level 10 assassin with a tradable lifespan of over 7,000 days and a non-tradable lifespan of over 1 billion days. His stats were Strength 39, Constitution 39, Agility 111, Spirit 41, Reputation 47. Shadow knew that the starting town needed 7 level 10 heroes to activate the teleportation array, but besides him, the highest level was only level 7. So they'd have to wait a bit longer. Deciding he had nothing else to do in-game, Shadow logged out to handle things in real life. As he returned to his main body, he activated the system, which asked if he wanted to trade away some of his lifespan to extract abilities into the real world. The system offered 4 stages: profession and level, equipment, skills, bloodline, and finally divinity. The boy chose to extract his profession first. A blue aura surrounded him as the system told him he had consumed 1,000 days of his tradable lifespan and extracted the unique hidden class Shadow. He unlocked passive abilities and all the stats bundled with the trait. Next, he extracted his equipment, trading away another 2,000 days of lifespan, becoming far stronger than any normal person. Then came skill extraction. He knew higher tier skills cost exponentially more lifespan to extract. Even Shadow hadn't expected that the cost was based on the skill's initial tier, not its evolved level. His assassination skill required 900 days of lifespan to extract, but even at the base level it was Platinum tier, still extraordinary. After sacrificing 900 days, Shadow extracted multiple skills, including Shadow Assassination and Venomous Dart. Now he had only 1292 days of tradable lifespan left and couldn't extract more for now. But even with this much, he had pulled out a Platinum level skill, which was an incredible bargain. Right now his physical strength was twice that of an average person and his agility had soared by 32 points. He had already surpassed human limits. With the ability to go invisible and unleash deadly poison attacks from 14 meters away, there was no doubt he could now take down that bastard Song. As he glanced at his phone, he saw the same article, realizing that Song was aggressively buying up lifespans and planning to settle the score once the game updated. But now Shadow had the brat's location, and it wasn't far. He could dash over in just over 10 minutes. But suddenly his phone vibrated. It was a message from his little sister, who couldn't believe Shadow was ignoring her. She made everything about herself, demanding an apology. But this time, Shadow was different. He immediately blocked her and threw the phone away, walking off while thinking that soon anyone playing the game would realize what the true game of the Forsaken World really was. As the scene shifted to the Great Squire, the entire place had turned into a chaotic concert ground, filled with deafening cheers as the crowd roared for Song, the brat who sat smugly on his throne while doing absolutely nothing worthy of their applause. Among the sea of screaming fans was Shadow's own little sister. Her face flushed as she cheered with all her might for the boy she saw as the love of her lost completely among the countless other girls who seemed ready to give up everything for him. And yet Song wasn't even performing. He was simply sitting there, lounging as if the entire world existed to worship him, while beside him sat a girl who leaned in close, smirking as she whispered that she already knew Song had been taken down by Shadow 3 times in that cursed game. But she told him not to worry, assuring him that she had already sent someone to Firefly Town to track the boy in reality, and once Shadow showed up to collect his money, They planned to ambush him and end his life right then and there. Song, with that gleam of arrogance in his eyes, wanted to know exactly how the investigation was proceeding, and the girl with a chuckle explained that their trap was already in motion. They would catch Shadow, call Song over so he could vent his anger as much as he liked without restraint, and then finish things for good. It only made Song's confidence swell even more, especially when he remembered hearing that the ladies' company had already used similar tactics to manipulate and control countless players, turning them into unpaid slaves, and as he beamed at her, she laughed even harder. She started boasting that all the players who had fallen into her schemes were just fools, struggling in life and easy to exploit, while on Song's side, things were far better because he had an army of women ready to throw away their lives for him. Women so blind that some would even die if he asked. Song sat there, glowing in self-importance, but just as the scene seemed locked in this sick parade of manipulation, a loud shout tore through the noise. Someone from the audience, a lone man, screamed out for everyone to stop recklessly selling their lifespan, warning them that according to the official statement, once their lifespan hit 0, they would die in real life too, something most of them hadn't even bothered to consider. His voice struck like lightning, and he called out Song directly, accusing him of knowing the truth, of buying up the fans' lifespans while fully aware it meant their deaths, branding him a reckless monster who endangered lives without a shred of shame. The crowd wavered, eyes flickering uncertainly, but Song, broken in his arrogance, refused to let the situation slip from his hands. He dismissed the man in his mind as nothing more than another troublemaker and slowly stood up, masking his manipulation behind a new performance. He addressed the girls sweetly, calling them his esteemed friends, and said he had noticed some debates among them, admitting with a carefully crafted sigh that while he was aware his acquisition of lifespans had caused some public stir, he wanted them all to know he felt deep regret and offered his sincerest apologies if he had caused any inconvenience. That single lie was enough to spark an uproar as the girls, now whipped into an emotional frenzy, shouted back that he had done nothing wrong and didn't need to apologize for anything, because they were giving their lifespan away by their own will. Seeing his trap working perfectly, Song pretended to be overwhelmed with gratitude, thanking his fans for their endless support while urging them with mock sincerity that all love should be positive and uplifting. He urged them to have rational minds while still pursuing their idols endlessly, throwing in empty words about mastering oneself and striving for a brighter future in the unique era of the Forsaken Games. His speech flowed smoothly, each word calculated, as he claimed he had been cooperating with authorities and putting his all into beating the game not for his own sake, but to give back to his beloved fans. He painted himself as a selfless hero who wanted everyone to live happily, embracing peace together, and even faked tears as he trembled and told them that if he had unintentionally hurt anyone he was deeply sorry. That was all it took for the crowd to fall even harder. The girls refused to accept his apology, insisting he was too gentle, and claimed they felt like they were ascending to heaven just listening to his trembling voice. Even the so-called ugly girls, their faces twisted in tear-streaked devotion, turned on the man who had dared to expose Song, screaming that he was just a savage seeking attention. And if things weren't already sick enough, the chubby girl burst onto the scene, stomping her way onto the stage in her hideous suit, her mere presence making it painful to watch. But she didn't care. She bellowed at the girls, asking how they dared to question Song, their one and only idol, and called them fools for believing any chaotic rumors spread by outsiders. She sneered at the official statements that claimed the game's lifespan mechanic affected reality, insisting that if that were true, she would already be dead, since the system had warned her she had less than a day left to live. And here she stood, proudly sacrificing herself for Song. And to her, even if she died in a day, it didn't matter, because her heart was in the right place, and she would never badmouth Song even in her dreams. Her words hit the crowd like a drug, and they cheered again, completely swept away as they declared they were ready to hand over their lifespans without hesitation. Girls shouted their remaining days, some boasting they had 20 days, others only 17, 5, or even 3. But they didn't care and pledged it all to Song, who gritted his teeth in disgust at the sight of the chubby girl, yet still forced himself to smile, and told her that to be loved by someone as amazing as her was truly flattering. As long as the love went deep, he claimed, he was ready to embrace every single ounce of lifespan they gave him, even as the girl herself melted in tears, ready to embrace her final moments. But before this grotesque love fist could reach its next sickening peak, a sudden blue light shimmered through the skis, and in a flash it pierced straight through Song's head. Blood and black matter exploded everywhere, and the whole audience froze in shock, unable to process what had just happened. The chubby girl, her face now splattered with gore, let out a high-pitched scream, her mind breaking as she watched her precious Song lying there with his skull blown open. The stadium erupted into chaos as girls screamed and stampeded. Bodyguards scrambled to shield the rich lady, and everyone ran without a second thought. The woman, pale with terror, knew exactly what was happening. She had seen it before. When Song's corpse hit the ground, a glowing hill of lifespans appeared around him, shimmering for a brief moment before vanishing into thin air, snatched away by someone unseen. And as her sharp eyes flicked through the panic, realization struck her like a hammer. Only Shadow could have used such an assassination skill. Only he could move so fast and strike with such precision. But before she could even voice her fear, before she could tell her guards who the killer was, another flash of blue light tore through her skull, splitting her open just like Song. Down below, unseen by any, Shadow stood cloaked in blue aura, his form invisible as he silently activated his assassination skill again and again, erasing every enemy that crossed his sight without mercy. As the scene shifted to the night, we see that the sister was not able to believe that the idol Song had met his tragic end at the Grand River Square, and the chubby, ugly girl, who was the brat's perverted fan, had donated her entire Forsaken Game lifespan, collapsing lifelessly before Song's body. The police investigation revealed that Song died due to supernatural powers, which should not be possible according to her. She was still not able to believe it. Just yesterday, she had gone to see Brother Song's concert, and now he was already having a funeral. The report said that the assassin who killed Song used throwing knives and was invisible, so the girl realized that this must be the power of the God-forsaken game. Meanwhile, another one of her friends asked if she also thought that maybe it was Shadow who killed Song as he was getting in his way, and the girl had also heard that Shadow took out Song 3 times in the game already, so it was not impossible. Still, both of them wondered how the powers given to players in-game were possibly manifesting in the real world. Zio wondered if Shadow really killed Song as he had already taken out several characters in the game. And in real life, the only one who could take down someone as popular as Song was Shadow because of his assassin ability. And the throwing knives and invisibility were the very skills of an assassin, which were their fundamentals. The girl concluded that the killer was Shadow and no one else. We see that as the taxi was taking her home, she decided that since Shadow had found a way to bring game abilities into the real world, she would get close to him and make him fall for her so that she could use our boy, because after all, he was a man himself. The girl was sure that no matter what method she had to use, she would still do it. As the taxi stopped, both Zio and her friend got out, and a shocking revelation was made that instead of using Shadow, the girl was planning to kill him instead because he had killed her brother Song. The girl was making a really distorted face, and her friend wondered if she was doing okay because she looked really terrifying. On the other hand, as the scene shifted, we see that Feng was inside a restaurant, using chopsticks to eat delicious and soupy noodles. As he was eating, he was thinking that in the Forsaken Game of Gods, players were almost invincible compared to reality, but it was still a bit of a mess that would cause mayhem if it was given to the wrong hands. Still, as the boy was really hungry, he had to munch down some carbs soon, but the phone vibrations were distracting him from the delicious food. It was another female friend of Feng who told him that his boss had been throwing a fit, saying that since he was blocked by Feng's phone and WeChat, he was going to get fired, and his salary for the month would be at stake if he didn't get back to work. Feng remembered that the girl was named Yang, and she had a really nice body and personality, but she was a bit fragile and often got bullied, even in the boy's previous life. She was also a member of the God-Slaying Guild. Feng decided to text her back, telling her not to worry about the boss and to just skip work so they could dive into the God-Forsaken game and level up. Hearing that, the girl wondered if Feng had ever stepped into the God-Forsaken game. She had heard that it was a real nightmare inside, as people were losing their lives at an alarming rate. The boy decided to help the lady, telling her that whatever her profession was at first, she should just stack her points on agility. The girl agreed, asking Feng how much life spend he had, because she knew that inside the God-Forsaken game, life spend was really getting pricey and they could buy valuable goods with it. The girl wanted to know how much he had earned and what he was doing, but Feng decided to lie, telling her that he was almost out of it all. The boy told her that he had bought a house and cars so he could live his life lavishly, and the girl was shocked, saying no wonder he had blocked his previous boss. But as Feng remembered, he realized that the fat boss was just a psychopath. The real trouble was his boss, as she was the daughter of the chairman of the Quinn Group. Feng's previous company was part of the Quinn Group, and the young lady spent her days doing nothing but targeting men. She was also involved in doing multiple dirty things with 6 middle-aged men as they checked into a hotel, and she had also gone out with 3 African-American guys for a joyride when it was time. Feng wanted to stay as far away from her as he could because she had local power in her hands by being the daughter of the chairman. Quinn was the kind of person who idolized foreign trends, and not long after the game's mass abandonment, she left the country and headed to North America, founding one of the top 3 guilds in the region, Alice's Wonderland, specifically opposing her own country. Even in the boy's past life, she had brought endless trouble to both his country and the God-Slaying Guild. The boy knew that he needed to figure out a way to take care of her before she left for abroad. Otherwise, once she set foot in North America, dealing with her would become a whole different ballgame. The boy knew that if Quinn were to die, the Alice in Wonderland Guild would never even exist, because it was rumored that the multifaceted founders of the guild were all entangled with Quinn, fulfilling her twisted desires and fetishes as long as she wanted. So as soon as Quinn herself died, the founders would also naturally lose their connection, and just like that, the guild would fade away. But as soon as Yang put down the phone, his sister Ziyu called Feng, surprised that he was out of the game safe and sound. She was shocked that he had not died. Since her brother was still alive, she just wanted to let him know that she had bought a house with her own money, so he should not come bothering her anymore. But instead of the fearful reaction the girl expected, Feng calmly told her that he wouldn't do so and wouldn't even call her again. This surprised the girl as she started blabbering in astonishment, telling her brother that from now on, he should not bother with her and not try to find out where she lived. But as the girl kept rambling, our boy told her that if she had nothing fruitful to say, he was hanging up. At last, the girl angrily told him that she was cutting all ties with him. But as calm as ever, Feng simply ended the call without saying anything and put the phone in his pocket. He decided to head back into the game and level up some more, as it wouldn't be long before someone reached level 10, and once that happened, the ability to extract powers into reality would be known to everyone. Feng was sure that when that time came, the world would know no peace again. As the scene shifted, we entered the God-Forsaken game, where one of Ziyu's friends could not believe that she had really cut ties with her brother. She was shocked by Ziyu's dumb behavior and told her to just apologize to him because he seemed genuinely furious this time. But Ziyu, as dumb as expected, was not ready to apologize even when it was her mistake. Instead, she told her friend that she had sold her lifespan to the Quinn Corporation for a whopping 2 million. Now the girl had a plan. She had already bought a house and wanted her friend to live with her. She decided to meet with Shadow soon. They would use him to level up. But suddenly a middle-aged man called out to Ziyu, giving her the assassin skill book she wanted. Even though he appeared middle-aged in-game, in reality, he was just a boy who wanted Ziyu not to forget her promise and do what they had discussed. Ziyu gave a frustrated smile, telling the boy that he would get to indulge in his little perverted acts once she achieved her goals. But deep inside, she knew that once she met Shadow, she wouldn't have to care about anyone else. Ziyu immediately called the guild leader Wang, telling him she had an assassin skill book, a control skill, and asked him to check if Shadow wanted it, ready to give it to him no matter what. Deep inside, the girl was laughing a devilish laugh, thinking that the foolish man actually had some worth after all, having managed to snag such an awesome skill book. This book would be the red thread tying Ziyu to Shadow. She would close in on him, quietly stay by his side, heal his wounds, and slay his enemies so they could level up together. She thought she would make Shadow become dependent on her help, and that he would gradually learn to trust her and treat her like his other half. But when Ziyu became strong enough and Shadow no longer held any value to her, she would kill him from behind to avenge Song. As the scene shifted, we came to a desert area inside the game where Shadow teleported and turned invisible, searching for bosses to slay. But suddenly he heard some noises. When he turned around, he realized that the boss he encountered was no ordinary one. A multi-handed monster resembling an arachnid stood before him. Shadow decided to first strategize and survive while the monster dealt heavy damage to another tank from a guild. But even the tank wasn't capable of withstanding the monster's attacks. His shield broke and he was being utterly defeated. As Shadow came closer, he realized the boss was the Golden Limb Spider, a level 8 golden boss. Shadow remembered that this monster had level 2 stealth detection skill. In other words, against this monster, his invisibility would be completely useless. The golden 8-legged spider started roaring as it waved multiple of its hands, each holding swords. Even though Shadow's invisibility was no longer effective, he was still moving as fast as lightning, attacking instantaneously and landing multiple hits on the spider. Each strike dealt critical damage and shaved off thousands of hit points, causing the spider to scream in pain and agony. Shadow knew the effect of doubling damage when attacking from outside the target's line of sight was working. And even though the opponent could see through invisibility, making it ineffective, Shadow still dealt significant damage, even if it had dropped a bit. However, the legendary blessing, the effect of liberation, amplified the weakness of the golden limb spider. Its heads and hearts were now almost 200% larger, with bigger critical points and a large surface area to attack. Among the 9 swift strikes of the Shadow's slash, Shadow knew that several would hit the target's weak points, inflicting triple weakness damage. So the blessing directly compensated for the damage lost due to the negated invisibility. The boy immediately remembered the little lamb and thanked her, knowing the skill was truly worthy of being called legendary. She was the one who helped him track down the Temple of Faith, which is how he obtained this special skill. As the scene shifted, we saw that the masked lady was watching the fight from afar, wondering what was going on and how the damage from Shadow's skills was so outrageous. He couldn't believe a single attack had dropped the golden limb to Ragnad's health bar by 2/3. But Shadow wasn't ready to give up. He kept fighting, throwing multiple venomous darts at the spider. Even though they weren't very effective, they still caused some damage. In fact, a critical hit to the spider's head inflicted heavy damage. but to Shadow, it still wasn't enough. He realized he had missed the precision target by just a little. His move was slightly out of sync, and he knew he needed to level up and achieve higher rankings to get a stronger stealth rank, so he wouldn't have to rely on strategy so heavily in critical situations. Now the boy had no choice but to face the eight-legged arachnid head-on, since his invisibility was no longer useful. The girl in the mask began screaming at Shadow, asking if he was crazy for trying to fight such a massive boss monster alone. But the boy refused to back down, unleashing another series of strikes at the spider, making it scream in pain once more. Meanwhile, both Zyro and the masked lady were in awe of Shadow's skills and speed. His reflexes were lightning fast, and he clearly understood the boss's attack patterns like the back of his hand. Even Zyro knew that assassins were fast enough to keep up with any boss in the game, and Shadow was even stronger. What shocked them most was how Shadow could dodge every one of the boss's attacks just in time. Both girls suspected Shadow had fought this boss many times before, and they were right. Shadow had previously fought the golden-limbed spider while traveling with a clueless girl who couldn't even protect herself, let alone heal him. Over time, Shadow refined his skills, realizing that warriors don't just rely on brute strength. Footwork and dodging are mandatory for survival. That's why Shadow had become unbeatable. Even as an ordinary warrior, he rose to the top of the global elite, and now, with his recent power-ups, things were even more magnificent. While thinking about all this, Shadow kept attacking the spider boss until finally it collapsed. The boss let out a final roar before falling. Compared to special bosses like the Golden Ghost Ship, which unleashed unavoidable attacks, the golden-limbed arachnid was relatively easy to deal with. But suddenly, the masked girl noticed the boss trying to escape. She wondered what was going to happen next. But Shadow wasn't about to let it get away. He materialized one of his poison darts, ran toward the monster, and sliced off its head in a single stride. A notification popped up. Shadow had slain the golden-limbed arachnid, gaining experience points, 7 evolution points, and 497 days of tradable life. Now it was time to use Greedy Hand, an overpowered skill. Shadow gained 21 extra evolution points and another 497 days of lifespan. He was stunned. The boss had dropped 28 evolution points and nearly 1,000 days of tradable life in one go. He began upgrading his skills, enhancing his shield of protection. The system notified him that the shield's evasion rate was back to normal. Before the assassin class skill was activated, the shield would convert his evasion into a damage-absorbing shield lasting 8 seconds with a 60-second cooldown. The skill required at least level 8. For every 20% evasion skill, Shadow gained 1 layer of immunity. The shield would shatter when the duration ended. Shadow was surprised, but not really. The epic shield of protection granted such powerful effects that he could now create almost 3 layers of damage-absorbing shields at once. He knew this would let him tackle many boss fights without even getting scratched. So he opened his status window and evolved the Shield of Black Light to epic level. He spent 6 evolution points, transforming the shield from platinum to epic. It now lasted 14 seconds, with the conversion rate reduced from 20% to 10%. Shadow now had 7 layers of damage absorption, instead of just 3, making him even more overpowered. With these upgrades, he could now enter high-level areas ahead of time. He still had 22 evolution points left, so he upgraded his poisonous dart skill. The system notified him that the dart's range increased from 40 meters to 70 meters. He spent 16 evolution points to upgrade it from silver to emerald. The dart now dealt 240 base damage with an 80% poison infliction rate. After triple evolution, the dart's damage output had at least doubled. With a 5-second base cooldown, the sustained damage rivaled that of Shadow's slash. The surprises weren't over. Shadow noticed that 2 pieces of assassin gear had dropped. He equipped them immediately. The first was the Ring of Agility, which gave him plus 20 agility, plus 20% movement speed, attack speed, and cooldown speed. The second was a pair of heavy red leather gloves of gold tier, increasing agility by 15, constitution by 12, physical defense by 18, and granting infinite elemental resistance. His health jumped by 588 points. Shadow realized his cooldown speed had skyrocketed to 55%. A skill like Shadow's Slash, which used to take 12 seconds, now only took 7.7 seconds. He had also boosted his constitution by 51 points, physical defense by 106, and health by a massive 1,517 points. Shadow knew he was becoming a broken character. His current stats could tank 3 hits from a golden boss without a scratch. He truly was getting powerful. Soon the girls and the tank arrived, shocked that Shadow had taken down a boss even large guilds couldn't handle so low. The masked girl was so impressed she offered to buy any special skills or gear from him, no matter the cost. Shadow turned to her, pulling out a golden book that shimmered with light. He told her it was a level 7 group skill called Frost Bounce *, which launched ice orbs that bounced up to 10 times. He offered to sell it for only 800 days of tradable life. The girls objected, saying 800 days was outrageous. They'd seen a level 5 golden skill book sold for only 400 days, but Shadow insisted that Frost Bounce was level 7 and dealt 40% more damage than level 5, so it was a steal. The masked lady agreed and bought it. Shadow received a notification that he had sold the skill and gained 800 days of tradable life. He turned invisible and teleported away, realizing there were barely any bosses left that could pose a threat. He decided to return to town and spread the word, offering rewards for the locations of silver and gold tier boss monsters. Shadow knew this would give him a never-ending stream of bosses to slay and skyrocket his growth. Suddenly, a system notification appeared. It was a message from Wang. He said that their former teammate, Zayu, wanted him to meet Shadow and hand over a skill book. Shadow refused immediately, calling the skill trash. He suspected that since most people now believed he was responsible for Song's death, Zayu giving him a skill would look suspicious. Shadow told Wang firmly that it was trash and she should keep it to herself. He wondered whether Zayu was trying to climb up with his help or out for revenge. Maybe both. The girl couldn't believe Shadow had rejected her offer. The scene shifted again. Shadow called Wang, asking him to come to town so he could guide him to the Western Temple. He hinted at a wild and thrilling adventure there. But Wang was serious. He wanted to ask Shadow directly, was he the one who killed Song with his assassin skills? Shadow knew there was no point in hiding anymore. He admitted it. Wang, being his friend, knew that Shadow had been offline during Song's assassination and that no one else could have pulled off such a hit. The motive and timing aligned perfectly, and since Wang had asked, Shadow realized the authorities had probably figured everything out. In just 2 more hours, other players would reach level 10, and the truth about ability extraction would be impossible to hide. Shadow knew this was the moment to gauge his country's official response. It would serve as a literal test. As the scene shifted, Shadow entered a large chamber where the military officials had gathered alongside their teams. Yu directly asked Shadow if he admitted to assassinating Song. Without hesitation, Shadow said yes. The woman then explained that they had conducted an investigation and found Shadow to be the prime suspect. Everyone in the room stared at him, yet they all knew the truth. Song and Zhang had harbored malicious intentions toward the boy, and Zhang Industries had been imprisoning players, abusing them and forcing them into labor. So with both of them dead by Shadow's hand, the act could be justified as self-defense. However, Shadow was well aware that, Because the military had yet to confirm the boy's true identity as Feng, they had decided to continue their alliance with him, for now. In his previous life, Shadow had maintained a clean record while working with the authorities. But this time, things were different. He had already taken out both Song, Fei, and Zhang himself, and he was certain this act would cause a major shift in the balance. Still, what he truly wanted was for everyone to witness his rebirth and see how he would shake the entire God-forsaken realm with his discoveries. Opening his inventory, Shadow realized he could now sell the platinum-grade items he no longer needed. Backed by official sources, anyone could now purchase gear and skill books from any profession. The official lifespan allocated to these items was more than sufficient, even for someone like Song. One by one, Shadow dropped various loot items. The crowd was stunned. They were staring at actual platinum-level gear and skill books. He told them that he had slain a high-level boss 10 times to acquire these platinum items, and even took down a golden boss that hadn't been officially announced yet. Skepticism spread at his words. No golden boss takedown had been broadcast. But Shadow explained that he'd stumbled upon a treasure chest thanks to his good luck, and had even obtained an emerald-grade skill book. The young mage from Wang's team confirmed it, stating that she had witnessed Shadow open the emerald chest and saw the amazing items that had dropped. Her name turned out to be Little Snow, though Shadow affectionately referred to her as Little Lamb. Hearing that nickname annoyed the girl. Shadow asked her if she preferred being called Little Blakey instead, but she snapped, demanding he just pick one name and stick with it. Regardless of the banter, everyone now knew they couldn't compare Shadow to any other player. While they struggled to bring down even a single silver boss, Shadow casually opened platinum and emerald chests like they were nothing. Now came the moment to sell. Shadow started with the platinum-grade sharpshooter skill book, offering it for a flat 2,500 days of lifespan. Then came the platinum-grade berserker weapon for 1,500 days and a mage skill book for 3,000. A golden-grade skill book and robust yellow armor were priced at 4,000 days total. That was his final offer. With 25 items remaining, he offered them all at a discount, 16,000 tradable days for the lot. Any who agreed instantly, even when told her not to haggle and just pay the full amount. The deal was sealed. Shadow called the captain the true heroine for making such a great deal, but deep down he knew that once tradable lifespans surpassed 10,000 days, the units switched to years. At the current exchange rate, 60 years translating to roughly 22,000 days, that was equivalent to about 400 million in cash. Even for city officials, it was a massive sum, but the benefits far outweighed the cost. With this many gears and skill books, the government's official team could gain a powerful lead in the game. The stronger the government, the fewer future disruptions. It could even give them an edge in global conflicts. Then any who brought up a new issue. Big River Industries had imprisoned several players. They were preparing a rescue mission and wanted to know if Shadow would participate. He figured this might be their attempt to recruit him, maybe even whitewash his record for killing Song. But he had too much on his plate. He declined the mission, though he was willing to share some vital information. Shadow revealed that he had indeed brought his in-game powers into the real world to defeat Song and Zhang. As long as the godforsaken game existed, players could grind up to level 10 and then sacrifice their lifespan to extract their abilities into reality. It was exactly what he had done, and he warned them that time was of the essence. They needed to grasp what that meant. The captain understood immediately. If Zhang Industries people reached level 10 and unlocked real-world abilities, the rescue mission would face serious complications. Having said his piece, Shadow teleported away from the hall. After he left, the captain told Wang that their squad of 6 high-level players should split up. When united, they destroyed small monsters too quickly, and the damage output was inefficient for XP gain. Splitting up would let each member maximize their personal leveling. Wang agreed, telling the team to hit level 10 at all costs, log out, and report this intel up the government chain. The scene now shifted to the city's main shopping district, where the crowd was stunned. Shadow had set up his shop again. But this time he wasn't selling anything. Instead, he was making a bold declaration. He offered 30 days of lifespan for verified silver boss coordinates and 100 days for golden boss locations. Suddenly, a man approached him, asking if he was still peddling gear. He relayed surprising news. The CEO's daughter from Zhang Industries had declared that if Shadow helped her level up, she'd offer him 300 million plus a stake in Zhang Industries. The man insisted Shadow would never get such a chance again and should treasure it. But the shocking part was, he hadn't yet heard that Shadow had already killed both Song and the CEO's daughter in real life. As realization dawned, the man's face twisted in disbelief. How could the lady be dead? Yet he knew she had brought it upon herself. When she tried to catch Shadow in real life and force him into her schemes, he had eliminated her on the spot. At first she had offered 10 million to Shadow, asking him to level her up. He'd refused. The man had jumped at the chance instead, seeing the money. But when he tried to collect afterward, 2 men had brutally knocked him out. When he woke up, he found himself imprisoned in a basement he couldn't even identify. Whipped and tormented daily, he was forced to grind in-game to earn lifespan for the industry and lure others in. Now he couldn't believe that the same foolish Shadow he once mocked had brought down that evil woman. In truth, the fool had been him all along. The man tried to claim he had been forced into it, but Shadow saw through the lie. Rather than risk further exposure, the man tried to flee. Just then, 2 others arrived and handed Shadow verified coordinates for a silver boss. He paid them 30 days each. Meanwhile, a different scene played out elsewhere. People were gossiping about the Ace of Spades Guild, particularly its leader, a woman who embodied both wealth and beauty. She was the highest-ranking player in the Shin group, and many feared her. She had already taken out multiple players and might now be eyeing their lifespans. She walked flanked by 2 muscular men, casually commenting that the game wasn't that impressive. She had spent a bit of cash to collect powerful gear and skills. Her plan was simple: overpower others and steal their lifespan. Deli D complained that she was supposed to be in North America, but her flight was grounded due to the reveal of this cursed game. She wanted nothing more than to indulge herself with some big D, American fun, stirring up storms of pleasure, but now she was trapped in this noisy metropolis. She viewed her own countrymen with disdain, calling them rats, weak as cockroaches. Turning to the white man beside her, Tony, she praised his countrymen's special abilities. Tony grinned, saying she had a good eye, and that they were superior in more than one department. The woman clearly understood what he meant, already feeling his hand brush her leg. But then she received news: Useless Song was dead. She had once played with him and found him disappointing. But if Shadow had killed him, then Shadow was a force worth knowing. Even though he came from a pesky country, she admitted he might be the best in the world. She resolved to find him, not just to meet him, but because she wanted him to take her down. Not in battle, but in bed. She logged off briefly, assigning someone to track down Shadow's real identity. She planned to offer him 3,000 days of tradable lifespan. He might not care for money, but surely he cared about extending his life. Yet her thoughts briefly wandered to Feng. She could never forget the look on his face when he rejected her. She wanted revenge, and now she hoped Shadow would deliver it. As the scene shifts, we come to a rainy forest, where we see a man who had just killed a zombified monster. And just when he was on the brink of death, we see Shadow's little sister, Zhao, who healed him. The man wanted her not to push him to the brink like this because he was just a hair's breadth away from meeting his great-grandma after being dead. But instead of listening to the feedback, the girl became even more arrogant, telling the man that he was just acting all fierce now that he was still alive and should be grateful. Even when the man tried to make her understand that he was only reminding her, Zhao was not ready to listen to anything, telling the man that her system had just alerted her that her hunger level had hit 90%, and she was logging off to grab a bite. And so she was taking her friend along too, even though the group was in the middle of a mission and the man still needed the healer's help. Zhao didn't listen and logged out. The man was now really frustrated because he was the boss of these ladies. But just after one glimpse of Shadow and how powerful he was, the sister had started giving him the cold shoulder instead. The man swore that if he ever found the sister alone, he was going to do such things to her that would make her knocked out in bed for a whole day. As the scene shifts again, we see that in the real world it was morning time, and Zhao woke up inside her new apartment, feeling really hungry after not exiting the game for so long. The girl started checking all the food delivery apps and services, but they were all closed and there were no riders who were taking orders or coming to her house to take her to a restaurant, because they had also gone into the Forsaken game instead and were trying to level up. The girl immediately remembered how, back home, Feng was always the one who whipped up something delicious without her even saying anything. She didn't even need to lift a finger, nor did she need to think at all. But now she was all alone. Not ready to surrender and apologize, the girl slapped herself 2 times, wondering how hard it could be to make a meal compared to the freedom she was getting. She thought that cooking was just a trivial matter, and she could do it in no time if she tried. And even without Feng, she would definitely be living a much better life. But man, how wrong she really was. As the scene shifts again, we come near a beach where there was a sand den, and inside the den was a giant-looking scorpion who was coming towards our boy. But before the creature could even reach him, Shadow used his assassination skill to break the scorpion's head into 2 halves, clean justice. Then a system notification popped up as Shadow realized that, after slaying 4 silver bosses for over an hour, the overall leveling up efficiency was quite impressive. He had slain 4 silver bosses, and each time he took one down, he got a dazzling 16 evolution points. On average, each silver level boss could yield an astonishing 13,500 days, and all the gear that Shadow was wearing made it even easier because they were gold tier or better. The current cooldown speed had skyrocketed from 55% to a dazzling 75%, and the Shadow, which previously needed 12 seconds, had now transformed into an almost instant cooldown. The power output had also skyrocketed to an incredible level. As there were no platinum level bosses on the outskirts of the safe town, the golden level ones were already the only option. And to soar higher than where Shadow actually was, there was only one path of career advancement. He knew that the platinum tier bosses he would face in the future would each have at least level 2 stealth detection. So he needed to level up his career and class as soon as possible, getting his stealth to level 3. But he was still over 20,000 experience points short. He knew that only by reaching level 3 or higher in the spell could he minimize the chances of unexpected surprises when facing a platinum level boss. After all, in Shadow's past life, defeating a platinum level boss required a perfectly synchronized team of 20 people working together like a well-oiled machine. But now, things were different. Shadow decided to head back to town and make some connections so that he could resell the items he got from grinding, as he wanted to stay ahead of everyone no matter what. Soloing the platinum level boss for the first kill was actually his main goal for now. And as Shadow again sold his gear, he earned a tradable lifespan of 105 years. Behind him was a man who was happy that Shadow had sold his gear to him. With that, our boy was close to 40,000 days of tradable life and had extracted quite a few great deals. But suddenly a man from Justice called out to Shadow, telling him that he had a hit list and Justice wanted Shadow to do some sneaky work. He had to go into the real world and take someone out, but the reward would be more than worth it. At first, Shadow ignored the man, but he was not ready to give up. Coming up ahead of him once again, the man told him that he needed to take care of someone called Feng, who was just an ordinary person. Since Shadow had already killed Song, the man thought that killing Feng would also be a piece of cake for him, and Justice considered it free money lying around. But Shadow was shocked, wondering why someone would want to kill Feng. At first he asked the man if Feng had crossed him, and now he wanted to take him down. But the man was only there on behalf of someone else, telling Shadow that after completing the work he was going to give the boy 3,000 days of tradable life. Hearing that, Shadow was stunned, wondering why there was a bounty of 3,000 days on Feng's head and who had the resources to offer it. As far as he could remember, he had not offended anyone in the real world yet, and from all the players he knew, he realized that the real person behind it must be someone else entirely. In his previous life, he had his share of conflicts with others, but that was during the late stages of the God-forsaken game. Getting targeted this early must be due to some old grudge from before the Forsaken game descended. It had to be someone who held a serious grudge against our boy to offer such a high price. And now the boy realized who was behind this. The only woman who had the motive and the means to hire someone to kill Feng was none other than the lady from the Shin group. However, with the financial might of the group, if she truly wanted Feng dead, then she could have taken him out long before the God-forsaken game even arrived. So Shadow knew the deal must have some hidden motive. Now the boy realized that maybe the lady's primary goal was to make an acquaintance with Shadow, and as for getting rid of Feng, that was just a side task, because previously Feng had turned her down due to her characterless nature. Shadow almost laughed, realizing that even when he had not gone looking for her, she had already found him. The boy decided to take the job, but gave a condition to the man. He needed half the payment up front, and when the task was done, it should be his call. The man was flustered by this sudden demand, telling Shadow that he needed to check with his higher-ups first. They agreed, and both the man and Shadow completed the trade, with Shadow getting an astounding 1,500 days of tradable life. Meanwhile, Shadow wanted the lady to just wait, because he would be coming for her soon. The man gave the address and details of Feng to the boy himself, telling him that finding the boy would surely be a breeze. Taking that, Shadow started walking away. But suddenly a sweet voice called out to him, calling him Big Brother and asking him to wait for a moment. The voice belonged to a beautiful lady who had the coordinates of a golden boss, wondering if Shadow was still interested in buying it. Shadow still abided by the previous offer, offering 100 days for the boss's location. The lady agreed, wanting Shadow to follow her because it was a bit far to the north of the town, but she was ready to guide our boy there. The boy asked if she knew the name of the boss, and she informed him that the boss was named the Plague Weaver. Shadow immediately realized that if the lady knew the name of the boss, that meant she had dealt with it. On the other hand, the lady wanted to know if Shadow could handle a golden boss on his own or if he needed a healer to tag along, because the boss had area and poison damage. Shadow already knew the Plague Weaver well, and it truly was a golden tier boss, as it had a toxic aura that caused players to continuously lose health every second as long as they stayed inside its deadly range. So to take down the boss, Shadow needed to strike with lightning speed. But for him, right now, it was just a matter of unleashing a few skills. The woman explained that the walls she had mentioned were deeper inside the cave. Her team had already cleared out the smaller monsters, but the boss had proven too difficult for them to handle. That was when she found Shadow. Without wasting time, she turned to lead him into the cave. After walking for some distance, she pointed toward a narrow cliffside and told him the boss was just below. Shadow looked down and saw a large, tree-like creature with dried, brittle branches. Though it resembled a dead husk, it was clearly alive, its body pooling with a slow rhythm and a faint greenish mist spread outward from it, carrying a poisonous aura. Seeing the creature, Shadow simply nodded and confirmed the agreement. A notification confirmed that he had transferred 100 days of lifespan to the woman. Even as they stood there, Shadow was quietly calculating. The toxins released by the boss would cover a wide area. However, if he activated his Shadow Demon technique and relied on its 75% evasion effect, it would give him enough room to maneuver. But the woman's expression changed. Sweat formed on her brow, and she turned to him, her voice low and strained. She admitted that it had all been a trap. As soon as Shadow engaged the boss, someone was meant to swoop in and finish him off. From what she remembered, the enemy team had level 2 anti-stealth capabilities. Shadow didn't seem fazed and told her it didn't matter, but the woman was visibly uncomfortable. She confessed that the others had forced her to pretend to admire him and get close to uncover his true identity. That was her only role. He listened silently, a faint grin behind the mask. The plan was shallow and poorly thought out, but he didn't interrupt her. She continued, lowering her voice further and placing a finger over her lips to keep anyone from noticing. She revealed that the people behind this were threatening her in real life. She wanted them gone. She wanted to be free. Curious Shadow asked who they were. She answered without hesitation, the team known as Leisurely Clouds. At the sound of that name, Shadow's thoughts flashed back. That was the same group that had once tried to steal the golden ghost ship boss from him, but afterward their leader had sent him a skill book in apology. So they were still around and clearly hadn't learned much. The woman went on, saying that if Shadow had the strength to take down someone like Song, then these people wouldn't be a problem for him either. Their leader's name was Dongfang, and she was placing all her trust in Shadow now. She pleaded with him not to betray her, because if Dongfang wasn't stopped, she would be the one to pay the price. Shadow tried to recall if he remembered anyone named Dongfang, but nothing came to mind. A plan like this, clumsy and amateurish, made him think that the guy must not have lasted long in his past life. Still, he told the woman he was heading in to deal with the boss right away, and he intended to take care of whoever showed up after. He asked the woman to continue playing her part to act just as the others expected. That way they'd come close, and he could handle them all in one go. But the woman remained uneasy. She warned him again. Previously, Dongfang had brought 3 full teams of 18 people to try taking down this same boss. In less than 30 seconds, they were completely wiped out. The poison damage was too intense, and they hadn't even managed to chip off 5% of the boss's health. There was no way to defend against the gas. It spread everywhere. The only real option was to find a way to end the fight quickly or escape entirely. But by now Shadow was already deep in his assassination stance, blending into the shadows and circling for an opening. The tree-like boss began to stir, forming a glowing red sphere at its core. The energy buildup was ominous. Clearly, a high lethality skill was on its way, but Shadow didn't back off. Activating his throat-slitting assassination technique, he launched forward with blinding speed, slashing through the boss's brittle limbs with precise, repeated strikes. His movements were fast enough to leave afterimages, and the damage from the installed techniques racked up quickly. The creature let out a distorted screech as its health plummeted below half in seconds. From above, the woman could barely believe what she was seeing. One swift charge, and Shadow had already taken down 2/3 of the boss's HP. The damage dealt exceeded 80,000 in total. She wondered whether he was even human. Moments later, Shadow struck again. With just one more combination of attacks, the boss crumbled like a dead tree finally cut for lumber. The branches splintered apart, and before the heavier pieces even hit the ground, the fight was already over. Shadow instantly dematerialized and reappeared on the cliff. He knew his striking skill had a cooldown of around 25 seconds, but with a 75% cooldown reduction in effect, it would be ready again in just over 14 seconds. That was more than enough time. He chose to hold back on attacking the main body of the boss for now, preferring instead to let the enemies walk right into their own grave while he waited for his abilities to refresh. Meanwhile, a large group of players was pouring into the cave, their eyes glowing crimson, giving them a sinister presence. The leader ordered them to prepare. They were going in to kill the boss and anyone else they came across, mercilessly wiping out anyone who dared stand in their path. As he neared the lady, she turned around, fully aware that the trap had already been triggered. It was now up to Shadow to act. According to their plan, she had to block the others and make it seem like she was under threat. Whether she could actually hold them off or not remained to be seen. Shadow hadn't expected much from her, at most a few seconds of delay. But then, to his surprise, the woman summoned a golden shield right in front of her, instantly halting the charging group. The moment he saw it, Shadow understood. That was no ordinary item. It was a golden elite shield, a defense tool of absurd durability in the early game. He guessed she must have received it as a divine reward from some ancient god, likely during an encounter involving a golden treasure chest in the wilderness. But it didn't matter anymore. Now it was his turn. He launched himself forward and activated Shadow Slash, sweeping through the crowd with precision and lethal speed. The skill wasn't just flashy, it was brutal. Anyone who had come close enough to try their luck was sliced down in an instant. Their bodies collapsed before they could even cry out. But Shadow wasn't finished. He unleashed the crimson flower of life absorption, and soon eerie red blossoms sprouted from the corpses, drawing out every remaining shred of life essence from the fallen. The lady stood frozen, both in awe and in terror. What she was seeing went far beyond her expectations. A single skill had massacred the entire group, and now their bodies were infested with grotesque crimson flowers feeding off them. She quietly thanked the gods that she hadn't followed Dongfang's instructions to the if she had, she'd be lying among the dead. Now seeing an opportunity, she proposed an alliance. She offered to share the real-world location of the Dongfang clan, suggesting that they could be hunted down directly. Shadow found the proposal tempting and agreed, realizing this was a useful lead. The woman, clearly relieved, tried to seal the deal with more than words. She cupped her chest with both hands, speaking in a sultry tone, promising special services and claiming that her throat was especially tight. Shadow didn't even glance her way. His attention had already shifted. He turned back toward the boss and moved toward it with quiet determination. With a single, decisive strike, he ended it. The towering tree-like creature that had once radiated poisonous energy was torn apart. It crumbled like old, dry wood chopped for firewood, unable to even resist. The system quietly tallied the results. Shadow had defeated the Plague Wielder, a level 10 gold tier boss. The rewards were generous: experience points, evolution points, and a massive bonus of 555 days worth of tradable lifespan. He immediately noticed how much more valuable this was compared to draining regular players. Running around, gathering mobs, and wiping out groups might be satisfying, but nothing beat the clean efficiency of a boss kill. Before absorbing the loot, he glanced over his shoulder to see if the woman had left. She was still there, but quickly gave a small smile, claiming she was already on her way out and telling him not to worry. Satisfied that she was gone, Shadow activated Greedy Hand and began collecting everything left behind. Among the spoils, he noticed a skill book, one that caught his interest immediately. It taught a move called Darkest Hour, a platinum-grade assassination skill. The cooldown was meant to be 60 seconds, but with his current bonuses, it was reduced to 34. The technique unleashed a dark radiance from his blade, blinding every enemy within 20 meters. The higher a target's mental resistance, the shorter the effect would last, but that didn't bother him. A second or two was all he needed. This was perfect. He would no longer need to rely on positioning alone. As long as he blinded his targets, he could double his damage output. Even if they were high-level bosses with hidden attributes, it wouldn't matter. His efficiency wouldn't drop, and more importantly, they wouldn't see death coming until it was too late. The boy obtained a new weapon. It had an attack power of 216, increased his agility by 42, and added a 0.3 multiplier to attacks aimed at weak points. The weapon also had a unique effect. Any attack made while in stealth would be infused with poison that exploded after 3 seconds, dealing 50% of the original attack's damage. Shadow was satisfied with the gain. For him, it was another productive day with good rewards. The evolution points he had accumulated were also progressing well. He estimated that once he reached 98 points, he would be able to evolve his epic grade greedy hand into a legendary one, which would improve his loot collection rate further. He also noticed that he needed just over 10,000 experience points to level up his profession, so he went back to farming mobs. The moment he appeared in the field, the monsters started to flee, but it didn't make much difference. Shadow's stealth skills made it easy to close the distance and eliminate them before they had a chance to get away. From the outside, it looked like the monsters were just falling one after another without any visible cause, but in reality they had no chance to detect or respond to his attacks. After a long session of grinding, he received confirmation that it was time to upgrade his profession. As the system activated, a yellow light surrounded him. His profession level increased to 1, and he received a boost in his stats. His spirit stat rose from 5 to 15, and his profession-related attributes improved as well. His weapon weight and strength increased from 3 to 9, and his agility rose sharply from 8 to 24. He received new skills, including a passive that doubled the duration of his stealth. Another passive increased the level of his stealth skill to level 2, raising its effectiveness further. He retained a profession-specific passive that enabled a special effect. If he attacked an enemy without being seen, the strike would be classified as a phantom strike. The damage, which was previously doubled, was now increased to triple the normal amount. He also realized that reaching the first level of his hidden profession had multiplied his basic attributes by 3. Additionally, he was now able to activate stealth again while already in stealth, meaning he could theoretically remain invisible indefinitely as long as he managed his cooldowns properly. The bonus damage from attacking enemies who couldn't see him had increased as well, from double to triple. Shadow recognized how strong he had become at just the first tier of advancement. His hidden class clearly had a high growth ceiling. As he reviewed his progress, a system-wide announcement appeared, stating that 7 players from the city region had already reached level 10. As a result, a teleportation portal to the abandoned land of the Divine would open in 10 minutes, and eligible players were advised to prepare for the journey. He found it surprising that even at 8:30 p.m., several players were still active and had already reached the threshold. His name was at the top of the rankings, but he noticed that the second spot was taken by a player named Rose, followed by Zio, Dolly Wang, and Yu. All of them were names he was familiar with. In his previous life, foreign players had dominated the rankings during this stage of the game, but this time things had changed. Because he had sold so many skill books and gear early on, many domestic players had progressed faster, and now they were occupying top positions on the leaderboard. He understood that altering too much could shift the balance of the game and affect how events played out. He had already influenced things more than he intended. Meanwhile, in the real world, a group of officers apprehended a man and handcuffed him. One of them reported to a superior that the key members of the industrial crime syndicate had been arrested. However, 3 key figures were still inside the game and had not logged out. Since their bodies were unresponsive in the real world, the authorities were unable to detain them physically. The officer asked for further instructions, but the superior told him to report the situation to NU and let her find a way to force the suspects to log in or return from the game. The police had already developed effective ways to catch people playing the game. No matter how strong they were in-game, they still had to return to their real bodies eventually. Hunger, fatigue, and basic needs made it necessary. Once the suspects logged out to eat or rest, they would be apprehended immediately. Even criminals couldn't avoid that. This time, the process had gone unusually smoothly. The police were aware that it was largely due to Shadow. He had provided them with information about Great River Industries and tipped them off about the possibility of extracting in-game abilities into reality. The senior officer understood that if they had delayed the arrest any longer, the syndicate leader Jung would have likely reached level 10. At that point, the extraction of game powers into the real world would have been completed and any attempt at capture would have led to violent confrontation. Thanks to Shadow's timely information and actions, that scenario had been avoided. Their country, unlike several others, had been spared from the chaos that had already claimed thousands of lives elsewhere. The police had even sent their own personnel into the game. These operatives were pursuing the Earth God, following a line of epic-level quests that would help them steadily climb toward level 10. Much of their early progress had been made possible by the gear and skill books that Shadow had provided. The senior officer made a mental note that Shadow was no longer just a skilled player. He was a valuable national asset. They would need to find a way to bring him under their long-term strategic umbrella. Back in the game, the female player who had been watching Shadow was still focused on him, complimenting him and saying he was like a hero who eliminated danger for the people. Her tone was flirtatious, admiring. Shadow, still hidden in stealth, responded offhandedly, asking what had her acting so enthusiastic. Before she could answer, a series of notifications were quietly registered in Shadow's interface, and the girl casually remarked that no matter what Shadow did, the system or media always painted him in a good light. That confirmed to him that the authorities were deliberately managing his public image, likely to make future cooperation smoother and less controversial. He opened a private channel to contact the police, who asked him whether he had discovered Dengfeng's real location. However, they already suspected that Dengfeng had not logged out of the game at all. Without an exact physical location, they couldn't act on it. Shadow didn't pay much attention to the rest of the conversation. For him, the focus was now on reaching the forsaken land of the divine. He noticed several players already queuing at the teleportation circle located in the town. However, the teleportation circle on the mainland side remained unused. He made his way toward it. Upon reaching the teleportation stone, a brief system message confirmed that he was being transferred to the next continent, stating that the current town was merely a beginner's village and that the real journey would begin in the Forsaken Land. As Shadow passed through the portal, nothing could be seen. No figure, no sound, just the brief shimmer of activation. A few nearby players who had stealth detection skills were confused. Some had level 2 detection and were baffled by their inability to see anything. One of the players tried to guess what had happened, but a girl nearby commented flatly that it simply meant Shadow's stealth level had exceeded the detection threshold and was now beyond level 2. On the other side, Shadow arrived at the Forsaken Realm of the Gods. As he had expected, the layout was identical to what he remembered from his previous life. The ruins he stood in mirrored the structure of his real-world city. It was the same for every player when they arrived at the Forsaken Land. They found themselves in the ruins of their own cities. No one had ever figured out why the game worked that way, but the design was consistent. He didn't have time to think about it further. From a distance, he noticed 2 glowing crimson eyes staring at him. A moment later, a grotesque creature emerged from the shadows and lunged forward. It had several eyes and rough stones embedded across its back. Shadow quickly activated his invisibility and evasion skills, slipping away from the creature's attack. Now it was his turn. With a clean movement, he triggered an instant shadow slash, cutting through the monster with a critical strike. It was identified as an Earthshaker, a level 11 common monster. The creature collapsed and Shadow received the expected experience boost. From there, he continued his progress through the ruins, moving swiftly and quietly. Each group of monsters he encountered was dispatched with precision, stealth, strike, vanish, repeat. He understood that in this third realm there were no safe towns or checkpoints. Monsters hid in every corner, ready to ambush any careless player. However, he also knew of a sanctuary hidden deep within the ruins. If he could reach it, he could use it as a foothold and begin to establish dominance in the region. Among the rivers and broken buildings, the most secure refuge lay in the northwest, an old stronghold that once belonged to the sanctuary of the gods guild from his previous life.